All right, so today we're diving deep into AI regulations. Specifically, we're looking at California's proposed bill, SB 21047.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at one perspective on this, pretty in-depth.
Okay.
And it's a pretty strongly worded opinion piece that is very much in favor of this bill.
It's a hot-button issue for sure.
It is. I mean, AI is...
Yeah.
It's everywhere you look these days, but so are the concerns about, all the potential downsides, right?
Yeah, California often leads the way in tech law, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Exactly, and what kind of, ripple effects it has across the country. So really what we're trying to do in this deep dive is to get to the heart of the argument that this piece is making, which is essentially, why do we need to regulate AI now?
Right.
Like, what's the urgency?
Yeah.
And they don't really pull any punches. They jump right into some pretty scary scenarios, like right off the bat talking about, AI being used to create bioweapons or cause massive infrastructure failures.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they back up these fears with references to like some pretty prominent AI researchers who've expressed similar concerns.
It's not just like...
Yeah, these aren't just like fringe theories, Yeah. People like at the forefront of the field are worried about this.
Yeah, they even mention the godfathers of AI.
Oh, wow.
Yoshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hinton.
Right.
And how they're backing this bill.
Huge.
And those are the guys who basically laid the foundation for modern AI. So that's a pretty big deal.
It lends a lot of weight to their argument, for sure.
It definitely adds weight to the argument that, like, we need to act now. There's
this is
a clear and present danger almost.
Exactly.
That needs to be addressed.
So, of course, the other side of the coin is the whole innovation argument.
Of course, yeah. The idea that if you start regulating too much, you're going to stifle progress and you're going to drive AI development away from California.
Right.
Which is, you hear that a lot from big tech companies.
Yeah, that's a common talking point.
It is. But I think what's interesting is that the piece acknowledges that.
Okay.
They say, look, we get it. This is a concern. But they point out that this argument has been used before with other technologies.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And historically, a lot of those fears haven't really panned out.
So it's kind of like a boy who cried wolf situation.
A little bit, yeah. Like, how many times are we going to, use this argument? And they're saying that, in a lot of cases, regulation actually helped to create like a more stable and predictable environment for innovation to flourish.
So they're saying it actually can have the opposite effect of what people are claiming.
Exactly. And they also emphasize that this bill isn't, coming after everybody.
Got it.
It's specifically aimed at the big players.
Okay.
The companies that are pouring hundreds of millions, billions of dollars into the most advanced AI systems.
Okay.
Smaller startups and research labs, they're basically exempt.
So it's not a blanket.
Yeah. So it's not about stifling innovation across the board.
It's really targeted.
It's very targeted.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got potential harms.
Right.
We've got the innovation debate. Now let's get into the political side of things, because this piece does not hold back on calling out big tech.
Interesting.
For lobbying against the bill, even while publicly claiming they're all about AI safety.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, which is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point, because you often see this with companies, especially in the tech sector, where there's this big talk about, ethics and all these considerations. But then when it comes to actual accountability, they push back.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. Right.
It's all about the follow through.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder how genuine some of those promises really are.
Right.
And then they also call out this group, this kind of fringe group called effective accelerationists.
Effective accelerationists. Wow.
Yeah. And they are basically...
I never heard of this.
They're against any regulation whatsoever. They believe AI should just develop completely unchecked no matter what.
So full speed ahead, no guardrails.
Full speed ahead, consequences be damned.
Wow, that's
it's a pretty extreme stance.
Yeah.
And the piece is obviously very much against this. They see it as very dangerous and irresponsible.
Yeah, it's like driving a car with your eyes closed, basically.
Exactly. It's like, well, we'll just see what happens.
And hoping for the best. Yeah. Hope for the best. What could go wrong?
Right.
So it's really interesting. You've got like big tech on one side, worried about their profits. And then you've got these accelerationists who seem to be almost welcoming some kind of AI apocalypse.
Yeah. It's two extremes.
It's a pretty stark
contrast. It really highlights how high the stakes are.
It does.
In this whole debate.
Yeah.
You know, the decisions that are being made today around AI, it's going to have repercussions for years to come.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to shape the whole trajectory of this technology.
Yeah. And I think, you might be thinking, okay, California, AI regulation.
Right.
Why should I care if I don't even live there?
Yeah. Yeah.
But think back to social media.
Okay.
Right? Like, it exploded onto the scene with very little regulation. And we're still dealing with the fallout from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Misinformation, privacy violations, the whole mental health crisis.
It's a mess.
It's a mess, right?
Yeah.
And what they're saying is that the potential for AI's impact is even greater.
Oh, for sure.
It's not just about what shows up in your news feeds.
Right.
It's about jobs.
Right.
It's about healthcare. It's about national security.
It's potentially every aspect of our lives.
It could touch every single aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And what happens in California often sets a precedent for the rest of the country.
Right. California often leads the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's decided here could influence how AI is developed and regulated everywhere.
Yeah, it's like a testing ground almost.
Yeah, and to the author's point, it's not just about the immediate impact. It's about the future we're creating for.
Right, the long-term consequence.
Generations to come. And they are a young person. They're deeply concerned about inheriting a world.
Yeah, they're going to have to live with the consequences of the decisions we're making today.
It's like we're holding the steering wheel of this super-powered AI car. And we need to decide if we're going to floor it.
Right.
Or take a more cautious approach. Yeah. Yeah, it's a powerful analogy.
Yeah. All right, so I think we've covered the basics here.
Yeah.
Why regulate AI now? The arguments for and against, and the key players involved.
Sounds good.
Okay, so welcome back. I think we've laid out kind of the big picture stuff, the urgent call for AI regulation in California,
Right.
the potential benefits and risks, and the different kind of players in this whole debate.
Yeah, it's a complex landscape.
It is. It really is.
For sure.
So now let's shift gears a little bit and actually look at the proposed legislation itself, SB 1047.
Okay, let's get into the weeds a bit.
Yeah, like what does this thing actually try to do?
Right, yeah. What are the specifics?
So one of the key elements is this idea of creating an AI safety review board.
Okay, so an independent body.
Yeah, like an independent watchdog whose job it would be to assess the risks posed by these different AI systems.
Makes sense.
And then to recommend safety protocols.
So kind of like a checks and balances system. Exactly. It's about making sure that safety is prioritized alongside innovation.
Got it.
So you can kind of imagine like this group of experts who are constantly monitoring the AI landscape.
Right, like keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, looking for potential red flags and then, advising companies on how to mitigate those risks. Exactly. It's almost like having a safeguard against unintended consequences.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's hard to predict what those might be.
Exactly. AI is developing so fast.
Right, exactly.
It's hard to even know what the risks are sometimes.
Right. So having that oversight could be really valuable.
Yeah. So the bill also talks a lot about transparency.
Okay. Transparency, that's a big one.
It is. And it would require companies that are developing these advanced AI systems to disclose certain information about their models.
Okay. Like what kind of information?
Things like their training data.
Okay.
And potential biases in the data.
Right, because those biases can get baked into the system.
Exactly.
And then perpetuate those problems.
Yeah, and I think the argument is that if we're going to trust these systems to make decisions that could affect our lives, we need to understand how they work.
Absolutely. We need to know what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, and what data they're based on.
Right, yeah. What are they learning from?
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now, I guess one question that comes up is, wouldn't that also give competitors an advantage?
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Right. Like companies might not want to reveal
their secret sauce.
Their trade secrets.
Yeah. Especially in a field like AI where it's so competitive.
Exactly. And the piece does acknowledge that.
Okay.
They say, look, this is a valid concern. But they also say that the benefits of transparency in terms of safety and public trust outweigh those risks.
So they're saying it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off.
Okay.
Yes, there's a risk that some proprietary information might get out.
Right.
But it's more important to make sure that these systems are being developed safely and responsibly.
So transparency for the greater good.
Exactly. It's about finding that right balance. Another interesting thing that the bill talks about is the potential impact of AI on different groups in society.
Because it's not going to affect everyone equally.
Exactly. The benefits and the risks might not be distributed equally.
Right, right.
So the bill is trying to make sure that AI is developed in a way that benefits everyone.
So equity is a big part of this.
Yeah, it's about mitigating potential harms, like discrimination or bias that could disproportionately impact.
Yeah, because those biases can get amplified
Exactly.
if we're not careful.
So we've got the AI Safety Review Board, we've got the transparency requirements, and this focus on equity and inclusion.
Okay.
Now, what about the other side?
Right, the critics.
Yeah, what are the people who are against this bill saying?
Right. Well, some are saying that the AI Safety Review Board would just create a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy.
Okay.
And that it would slow down innovation. So it's that classic argument.
Right, the red tape argument.
Yeah, like too much government intervention is going to stifle creativity and progress.
Right, but the supporters of the bill are pushing back on that.
Yeah.
They're saying safety and innovation don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
They think that a well-designed regulatory framework could actually foster innovation by creating a more stable and predictable environment.
It's kind of like setting the ground rules.
Exactly, like having a clear set of guidelines can actually help businesses plan and innovate more effectively.
And it's important to remember that this bill isn't saying stop all AI development.
Right.
It's about putting some guardrails in place to make sure it's done ethically.
Right, responsible development.
Yeah, responsible.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, another point of contention is that whole transparency mandate.
Right. Yeah, some companies are really hesitant.
They are. They're worried about revealing proprietary information. And they're saying it could hurt their competitiveness.
Right, or even be misused if it falls into the wrong hands.
Exactly. So, again, it's that tension between transparency and protecting business interests.
It's a tough one. Where do you draw the line?
It is. It's a tough one. The supporters of the bill are saying, look, the benefits of transparency in terms of public trust and accountability outweigh the risks.
Okay.
But it's definitely a point of debate.
Yeah, it's a complex issue for sure.
It really is. And I think a lot of it comes down to trust. Do we trust companies to prioritize safety?
Right.
Even without these regulations?
Or do we trust the government to regulate effectively?
Exactly.
Without stifling innovation?
Yeah, tough questions.
It is.
This bill is definitely an attempt to find some kind of middle ground. Like, how do we harness the power of AI, but also minimize the potential downsides?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
It is. It really is.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah, like what happens next?
Is this thing actually going to pass?
Right. What's the likelihood of this bill actually becoming law?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
The debate's still unfolding. There are powerful forces on both sides of this issue.
Yeah, for sure.
But the fact that it's even being seriously considered shows you how seriously lawmakers are taking these potential risks.
Yeah, it feels like a turning point.
It does.
Regardless of what happens with this specific bill, it's like people are waking up to the fact that
we need to be having these conversations.
We need to be having these conversations and thinking about how we regulate this technology.
Yeah, this is not something we can just ignore.
It's not going away.
It's here to stay, so we better figure out how to manage it.
We better figure it out. Welcome back. So we've spent this deep dive really looking at, this proposed California law, SB 1047, to regulate AI. We've heard arguments saying, we need to do this now to prevent potential harm. We've heard, concerns about, well, is this going to stifle innovation?
Right.
And we've gotten into, the specifics of the bill itself.
Yeah, we've really dug into the details.
We have. So now I think it's time to sort of zoom out a little bit. And look ahead, what could be the ripple effects of this?
Right. What are the potential implications?
Both in California and beyond.
Yeah, because California often sets the stage for how the rest of the U.S. approaches tech.
It really does. And even the world.
And even globally, yeah.
So, what happens here matters.
A lot, yeah.
It matters a lot. So let's imagine for a second that SB 1047 actually becomes law. It would signal a pretty big shift in how we think about AI, right?
Absolutely.
Because right now, it feels like the focus is all about pushing the boundaries, developing the most powerful systems possible.
Right. Bigger, better, faster.
Exactly. And this bill is basically saying, hold on, we need to prioritize safety and ethics.
Right. Pump the brakes a little bit.
Alongside that progress. It's like saying innovation is great, but not at the cost of potentially harming people.
Exactly. We need to consider the consequences.
Exactly. So do you think that this shift in mindset could influence companies even beyond California?
Oh, I think it definitely could. You know, you might see companies start to build in those safety measures and ethical considerations from the get-go, even if it's not legally required.
Right. So it's almost like California could trigger a domino effect.
Yeah.
Leading to more responsible AI development across the board.
I think that's a very real possibility.
And what about on a global scale? Do you think other countries might
for sure.
look to California's model?
Yeah, I think a lot of countries are watching this very closely.
Yeah.
You know, trying to figure out their own approach to AI regulation.
Right.
And California could become kind of a blueprint.
Interesting. So we could actually see a more unified approach.
Potentially, yeah.
To AI governance worldwide.
Which is really important.
It is, because
as this is a global issue.
Exactly. AI doesn't
stop it or
respect any borders.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's flip the script for a second.
Okay.
What if this bill fails?
Right.
What kind of message does that send?
Well, I think it could embolden those who believe that AI should just develop unchecked.
Right.
You know, full speed ahead, no matter the risks.
Yeah, and it might also signal to other countries that the U.S. isn't taking this seriously.
Right, it could undermine those efforts.
Exactly.
To establish some kind of global governance framework.
Yeah, so no matter what happens, this whole debate feels like a really pivotal moment.
I think so, too.
It's highlighting just how important it is to have this conversation.
Yeah, we need to be talking about this.
About how we balance the potential of AI
right.
with the potential risks.
It's a balancing act for sure.
It really is. And we focused on one perspective here in depth. The argument in favor of this bill.
Right.
But it's important to remember that the debate is far from settled.
Absolutely. There are valid points on both sides.
There are strong voices on both sides. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I really encourage you to continue exploring this issue.
Keep learning, keep reading, keep listening.
Read more, listen to different perspectives, form your own informed opinions.
Yeah, don't just take our word for it.
Exactly.
Go out and do your own research.
Because the future of AI isn't something that's happening to us.
Right.
It's something we're actively shaping.
We all have a role to play in this.
We do. The choices we make today, the conversations we have, the regulations we support or oppose.
It all matters.
All of that is going to determine what that future looks like.
Exactly. So let's be mindful of the choices we're making.
And remember, this isn't just about California. This is about the entire world.
AI is a global phenomenon.
It is. So we leave you with a question.
Okay, hit us with it.
If you were a lawmaker, how would you weigh the potential benefits of AI against the potential risks?
That's a tough one.
It is. And what kind of future do you want to see?
Yeah, what's your vision for the future?
And what role do you think regulation should play in shaping that future?
It's a big question, but an important one.
It is. And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, definitely some things to ponder.
So keep asking those questions. Keep learning. Keep engaging in this conversation.
Because the future of AI depends on it.
It really does. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.